Going back on the record, the time is 1:32 p.m.
Welcome back, Mr. Stidham.
Thank you.
I'd like to start the afternoon by talking a little bit about the President's Council. What is the President's Council?
As relates to LuLaRoe, at one point in time there was a group of people who represented the IFRs. They were kind of our liaison with the field.
And it's my understanding that these were higher level folks in the
Yes.
IFR ranks. Were they all mentors?
I don't know.
Okay. When was the President's Council in existence?
Again, not sure. It was for a period of time. Don't remember if it was for 2 years or 3 different years.
But it's no longer in place now?
No.
And how big was it?
I believe there were maybe 8 to 10 people on the council.
And you described their role as a liaison for the IFRs interacting with folks at LuLaRoe?
Mm-hmm.
Who at LuLaRoe did they interact with?
Mostly with sales and marketing departments.
Did they receive any compensation or benefit from being a part of the President's Council?
Which one?
Any of the members of the President's Council?
No. Compensation or benefit?
Let's start with compensation.
No.
And then benefits.
Benefits, they were allowed to go on some trips that were kind of combination of a trip to a nice destination to have a council meeting.
Where were some of these trips to?
Las Vegas, I specifically remember, Salt Lake City.
Did they meet outside of these sort of in-person trips?
I don't know.
Handing you a document which will be marked as Exhibit 43. Oh, thank you. So this document, Exhibit 43, Bates numbered LLR-WA 000245569. It's titled LuLaRoe President's Council Web Meeting, September 4th, 2014. Do you recognize this type of document?
Yes.
And is it, what is it?
It appears to be the minutes of the agenda, an agenda for that meeting, and some minutes.
So this would have been prepared after the meeting?
Checked on lack of foundation.
I believe that the part in red are things that were discussed at that meeting.
Got it.
And whether Terrell was tasked with it or what that even means.
Well, so Mr. Terrell Transtrom, he worked for Service Quest, right?
Yes, he owned Service Quest.
He owned Service Quest. And Service Quest was a vendor for LuLaRoe, or a consultant. What work did Service Quest do with respect to compensation plans?
Again, I could not identify specifics. Terrell, Terrell at that time was involved in a lot of things, mostly as a sounding board and giving, again, as an external consultant, giving opinions. So I'm not sure what specific things he may have done there.
And if you turn to the front page, it indicates that this was a web meeting at the very top.
Okay.
In addition to the types of trips to Vegas, Salt Lake City, did the President's Council meet via web conference?
I'm going to say, based on this meeting titled web meeting, that it appears that we did.
Do you recall participating in any President's Council's meetings via computer or web?
I have no recollection.
Are there other councils like the President's Council? Or have there been other councils like the President's Council?
Check the form.
There was a same council, the same, set up with the same purposes that at one point was referred to as the Ambassador Council, but it's just a difference in name.
So originally the President's Council was called the Ambassador's Council. Is that fair?
Either originally it was called Presidents and then called Ambassador, or originally Ambassador and then Presidents. I'm not sure of when and where.
And when you said the President's Council was in existence for a few years, would that have included the time that it was called the Ambassador's Council?
Yes.
Is there something called the Art Council, or a council that deals with artwork?
No,
Has there ever been?
not to my knowledge.
Has there ever been a group of IFRs that advise as to artwork or design?
In an advisory, informal capacity, yes.
And when was that?
I don't know. Throughout time, as we created artwork, we got feedback from IFRs on what they liked, what they didn't like, what they thought we should do more of. So yes, there has been, but not as, again, not as a council.
Okay. So there's no group that
No.
it's presented to. It's just informally what do whoever IFR you happen to be interacting with, what they think of particular art.
Yes.
In August of 2016, was there a meeting that was generally referred to the State of the Union meeting, or State of the Company meeting? Would have occurred in Arizona?
Yes.
Did you attend that meeting?
Yes.
Do you recall, is my general time frame of August 2016 correct?
I have no recollection of the time frame.
What was discussed at this meeting?
I have no recollection of what was discussed at that meeting.
Do you recall who was invited to the meeting?
I believe that it was a leadership meeting, but as to exactly what the qualifications were and who was invited, I don't know.
And what do you mean when you say leadership meeting?
I mean, it would have probably been mentors and possibly coaches, maybe some high income earners, I'm not sure.
Do you recall presenting or speaking to the attendees of that meeting?
I do.
What did you talk about?
I don't know.
In preparation for this meeting, did you prepare notes about what you're going to present?
I don't have a specific recollection.
Did you have a PowerPoint with you when you presented to the
I
group?
don't recall.
So earlier we talked about how you would analyze data or trends. Do you recall discussing at this meeting any concerns regarding the consignment plan or the numbers relating to consignment sales?
I don't recall.
Who decided to hold the meeting?
Again, I don't recall. I've had hundreds of meetings in the last 6 years around LuLaRoe, so I don't recall.
So would this state of union, the union meeting, would that be a recurring meeting, frequent meeting?
I don't believe so.
So was it a one-time meeting, you think?
Again, I don't recall. We may have had other meetings that were referred to in that way, but I don't recall.
And did LuLaRoe pay for the mentors, coaches, and other high earners to attend this meeting?
I have no idea.
Who, other than yourself and Deanne, had the authority to call a meeting involving mentors and coaches?
Check to the form.
Ultimately, to actually call the meeting would be either Deanne or I.
Do you recall a meeting similar to the Arizona State of the Union meeting occurring in Salt Lake City?
I do not.
A moment ago, you described the numerous meetings that, in your role as CEO, you have to attend. How many of those require travel? How often do you travel to meetings for work?
Often.
So how many times, say within the past year, have you left California for a LuLaRoe-related meeting?
I don't know, but probably 6 to 8 times, maybe more.
And of these, how many were meetings with IFRs?
Most of them.
When was the last one?
2 weeks ago,
Who did you meet with?
IFRs,
Which ones?
the ones that came to the meeting. It was
What?
an open meeting
Oh,
to
an open
IFRs.
meeting? And where was it?
It was in South Carolina.
What was the agenda for this meeting?
I don't know.
In that estimate of roughly 6 kind of meetings that require travel, does that include a conference called Leadership?
Yes.
What is leadership in the context of meetings?
It's a regularly occurring training where, again, people that have achieved a rank of leadership are invited to attend, where we talk about leadership principles and specific education opportunities. We talk about motivation, and we talk about leadership principles, their responsibilities to their teams, and basically it's a educational opportunity for them to come and get more information about how to run their business and exercise their stewardship over their organizations.
And you said it occurs regularly. Does it occur every year?
It occurs 3 times a year, and then an annual convention once a year. So every quarter we have a major meeting.
I got it. So if, for example, I were watching a video entitled Leadership 2017, that could have been any of the 4 meetings in 2017?
That's correct.
What about the cruise? The cruise occurs once a year, correct?
Yes.
Does it occur in a set month?
Not always.
Okay. Does it generally occur in a particular quarter of the year?
Generally, generally first quarter. I believe this year it's going first month of the second quarter, April.
And do you speak at the cruise or
Yes.
on the cruise?
Yes.
Have you always spoken at the cruise?
Yes.
Do you always speak at leadership?
Yes.
Are there other regular meetings or conferences that you speak to involving IFRs?
There are regularly scheduled meetings that I occasionally speak to, but those are the ones that I'm scheduled, that I know I will be speaking at.
So if I think I understand you correctly, there might be a weekly call that does occur every week, and maybe once
But
in a
I don't get
while
on it
you
every
might speak
week.
at it.
Correct. Sorry.
Does that? What are some of the names of those? Are they trainings? Are they updates? What are they called? What are they called?
There's a weekly call called the LuLaRoe Show. There is an educational training that goes by different names depending on the theme for the year. This year it was called the Lift Tour. And so in addition to the leadership trainings, those are available to all of the IFRs, and they're held in different geographic locations.
Sorry, did you say the lift tour happens once a year?
No, it is ongoing. I think this year they probably had 16, 18 different dates.
Oh, I got it. It's a tour that occurs in multiple locations.
Yeah,
And is the material the same at each location?
I don't know.
And the LuLaRoe show, the weekly LuLaRoe show, has it occurred weekly since 2014?
Honestly, I don't know when it started as a weekly occurrence.
And was it called anything else prior?
Probably the home office update, the home office call, I don't know, and maybe more. Those are two that come to mind.
Is there something called the Tuesday update? Is that the same as the LuLaRoe show?
I would guess that that would be the LuLaRoe Show.
And have you spoken on the Tuesday update?
Yes.
And these are made available to any IFR online?
Yes.
Do IFRs have to participate live, or can they view previous showings?
Over time, the technology's changed, and I believe that now they can see it recorded.
But at some point, it
At
had to
some
be
point,
live.
they had to be there live.
Yeah. Earlier, we talked about the idea of MLMs, and you don't believe that LuLaRoe is an MLM. What about LuLaRoe is different in your mind from other MLMs?
Our IFRs purchase product from us. We're a wholesale supplier to them. The majority of their income is derived from selling that product to an end user. In my experience, most MLMs rely on what would normally be called a retailer actually being a user of the product, and they're heavily driven by recruiting.
And you don't believe that LuLaRoe meets that?
No, absolutely not.
Anything else different about LuLaRoe from MLMs?
Without disparaging the MLM industry, there's
confidential. Label confidential. It's okay.
no, there's a lot wrong with some traditional MLMs, and it was never our intent to participate in a plan that drove money back to the corporation without regard to the profitability at the IFR level. We're here to drive profitability for IFRs. Our business model is profitability for an IFR. That's what keeps us in business. If they don't sell product to an end user, they're not going to buy product from me. And there's certainly it was never intended as that kind of self-perpetuating program where you're just continually looking for new people in the program. It started without a compensation plan, period. It started when Deanne could no longer keep up with the demand to sell skirts, and so we were having a conversation one night and said, I wonder if there's other women who would like the opportunity to make the money you've been making. And she had a hostess that had held a party for her that asked if she could have, actually she called her and said, hey, can you come back to my house? I've got other customers showed up. And at that time, Deanne would give free gifts to the hostess, a percentage. If you sold, for every 10 pieces you sold, you got to pick a free piece. And that's what the hostesses were getting out of it. Brittany called and said, hey, I got more women that showed up, can you come back? And Deanne said, well, I can't come back, but you can meet me at the gas station and I'll get you some skirts. Brittany came, she wanted 8 skirts. Deanne said, I'll tell you what, if you buy 10, I'll give you the 11th one free and you can sell all of them. And Brittany did that. Deanne left town. About 2 hours later, Deanne called me and she said, Brittany just called me again and she wants 30 skirts. What should I do? And so I said, well, discount them deeper and sell them to her and let her make the profit. That was the start of the LuLaRoe distribution net. Until then, it was Deanne selling skirts. The first retailers came in and they were successful. They made a lot of money selling skirts. And you know what? When they made a lot of money, their neighbors and their friends said, what are you doing? And they watched how they did it and they went, I think I could do that. If I did it, do you think they'd let me? And so they came to us and they said, what if I bring my sister? What if I bring my neighbor? What if I bring my cousin in? Do I get anything? And I felt like it was only fair if they brought someone in and helped us grow our business that they should be compensated. And so the very first compensation plan was a 5% bonus on those people's purchases. And it was on their purchases because I had no idea what they were doing, no way at all to track their retail sales. They weren't even using our technology. They were using their own credit card processing, Square and other things that, PayPal and other ways of tracking things. And so in my experience with MLM over the years, found that very often the story that was being told didn't disclose all of the information. So they would tell you this is how it works, but they didn't tell you about added costs and hidden things and some of those things. We set up from the very beginning to be very, very transparent. We include free shipping. Why? Because if I tell you this skirt costs $20 and you sell it for $40, I want you to be able to pay $20 and sell it for $40. And I don't want you to have to say, well, wait a minute, what did I pay for shipping? And what else was I required to buy? And how much other things did I have to do to comply with the company's program? Now, are there other business expenses? Of course there are. Every business has business expenses. But I wanted our relationship with our retailers to be very, very clean and simple for them to understand what our offering to them was. And I don't like MLM in general. And in fact, we internally say we are an MLM company, mid-level management. That's what I pay the people that are in the compensation plan are being paid to perform a function that I would have to pay someone if they didn't do it.
Just to follow up on a few of the ideas that you touched on. You talked about the majority of IFR income being driven by retail sales. How do you know that?
Because because fewer than 20% of the retailers have ever participated in the compensation plan. I also know that, I know it anecdotally from asking people. I know it by looking at wholesale numbers versus retail numbers now that we can actually track them and know what we paid out in compensation. And I know that the majority of the money, by far, by a factor of 3 to 4 times, is made by people who sell product at retail.
And you mentioned, of course, there are other business expenses. What are some of the other business expenses that IFRs have?
You'd have to talk to each one of them. It depends on their path to market.
What are some of the ones that you've heard of from them?
If you're doing online sales, you could participate in an Adword program. You would have an
Sorry, did you say AdWord?
Adword program, yes. You might have an expense with that. If you're traveling, you might have some vehicle expenses. If you have space in your home, you might choose to identify that as a rental expense.
Any others that you can think of?
I'm sure there's thousands more. Those are the ones that come to my mind right now.
Are there expenses incurred by them in attending any of these conferences?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Do IFRs incur expenses to attend LuLaRoe conferences?
Yes.
Subject on form.
Do they pay LuLaRoe to attend the conferences?
I'm sorry, again?
Do they pay LuLaRoe to attend the conferences?
Yes.
Do they pay related to the cruise, to attend the cruise?
They do not pay for the cruise. They may have travel expenses associated with coming to the cruise.
Do they pay LuLaRoe for any training that they receive?
Specifically for training, no.
Do they pay for marketing materials that they may receive from LuLaRoe?
Check to the form.
Not that I'm aware of.
Does LuLaRoe sell IFRs any business supplies?
I believe we sell some.
And what are those?
I believe that at different times on the supply store, we've had clothing racks available, coat hangers available. And honestly, I don't know beyond that. I know that there's probably some things that are available for them to purchase from us rather than from a third-party supplier.
And you mentioned IFRs purchasing AdWords. What are AdWords?
If you're marketing and if you're trying to drive people to your location online, many of the platforms have an opportunity to buy ads for people that search for certain terms. And beyond that, you're way out of my depth. I don't do AdWords. I'm just aware of them.
Does LuLaRoe purchase AdWords?
No.
We talked a little bit about profitability of IFRs. And earlier today, we talked about LuLaRoe's average wholesale price, average retail price. Have you calculated LuLaRoe's average profit margin for a piece of product?
For a piece of product, yes, there is a margin. That does not mean it's a profit margin.
And any other marketing of LuLaRoe product you can think of?
Not off my top of my head.
Circling back to talk about each one of those. You mentioned marketing assets available to IFRs. What sort of marketing assets are available to IFRs?
Again, I followed that up with online photographs of the clothing,
Okay.
Descriptions of the clothing, and again, it's not a description as in this is a blouse. It's this is a blouse made of this product that could be worn for these kind of occasions, and I mean it's more of advertised type copy that they can use to present it to the public.
And I assume, but correct me if I'm wrong, that this is only available to IFRs. Is that right? It's not. I
Yeah.
can't find it publicly.
No, it's available to IFRs.
And where is it stored? Is there a repository? Is there a name for where this stuff is stored?
Yeah, I don't know the name for it. I don't know how exactly they do that.
Next, you mentioned management of social media. What did you mean by that?
I mean, managing our presence on social media, Instagram, our web page, the Facebook pages. Again, I'm not really the social media guy, so but in any of those platforms where people are coming to find out what LuLaRoe is, marketing manages our presence there.
And is there someone within marketing who specifically deals with social media?
Justin Lyon.
Is there someone who specifically deals with the assets available to IFRs?
It has been Justin. It is now under Lauren.
And finally, you talked about press releases. How often does LuLaRoe issue press releases?
Seldom.
So, who handles press releases?
We have a communications department that is overseen by Art McCracken, who is the Chief Strategy Officer.
Does anyone in communications or well, withdrawn? Does anyone at LuLaRoe deal with marketing potential IFRs?
Object to the form.
I'm not sure. Are you saying people who are not IFRs?
Correct.
No, not specifically.
Is there anyone at LuLaRoe who deals with marketing to recruit IFRs?
No.
Now, you talked about marketing assets available to IFRs who then could use that to market to end consumers. Does LuLaRoe do any direct to consumer marketing?
We do very little because there's not a clear pathway from that marketing to a purchase, and our marketing relies on really relies on relationships. Our retailers are selling mostly to people that they can see, that they can talk to, that they can discern what their needs are and create a relationship.
And it sounds like Mr. Lyon, Justin Lyon, Lauren, and Art deal a lot with marketing. Has LuLaRoe
Started because my daughter wore it, and her friends would go, "Oh my gosh, you look so great." And the maxi skirt was as comfortable as her husband's sweats, but just looked a lot better. And she could just pull it on and go to the market, put her hair in a ponytail, and instead of pulling on her husband's sweats, she pulled on a skirt, and all of her friends told her how great she looked.
Earlier we talked a little bit about IFRs and profits that they've made. Are there types of IFRs that you've noticed have been more successful than others?
Object to the form.
When you say types, no.
Have you noticed any characteristics in common that successful IFRs have?
Yes.
What are those characteristics?
You can talk to people and you have a work ethic.
Anything else?
Nope.
You noted that internally at LuLaRoe, you like to call yourself an MLM, but for mid-level marketing, or sorry, mid-level management. Have you ever thought about cutting out the mid-level and selling directly to consumers?
No.
Have you ever used certain successful IFRs as models or examples for other IFRs, sort of as inspiration or as an example of here's what someone has done that's been successful?
Yes.
Have you ever referred to that as, we would like to replicate so-and-so's success?
Object to the form.
The specific term replicate, I don't know, but yes, obviously we've shown people who are successful as a possibility of what could be done.
And are there certain IFRs who their approach is just so unusual that it wouldn't make sense to recommend it to others because it really just works for them?
Objection, lack of foundation. It calls for speculation.
There are so many pathways to success that I would never second guess anyone. There are people who have surprised me both ways. There are people who I thought would be successful who aren't. There are people who I thought wouldn't that are. And each one of them has components in their success or their personality that could reach other people. And I would never think to try and pigeonhole what success looks like at LuLaRoe.
Who have been some of the biggest surprises?
I'm not going to say that.
That's fair.
So we're coming up on an hour, so whenever you think is, we can keep going, just whenever.
Yeah.
there's-
I have a couple of small topics. Let me try to knock those off. So I know LuLaRoe has policies and procedures. Do fashion consultants have to follow those policies and procedures?
Object to the form. Vague as to which policies, but go ahead.
We do not have a police force or a jail. Do we encourage them strongly to follow policies and procedures? Yes. Are there consequences to egregious violations of policies and procedures? Yes. But do they have to? No, they're free. There's consequences if they choose poorly.
Well, have you ever testified that they're not required to follow policies and procedures?
Object to the form. If you have prior testimony you want to show them, then show it to them.
And the answer is yes.
And you've also testified that at times policies and procedures are just guidelines, correct?
Same objection. You're summarizing. Go ahead.
We have at times waived compliance with specific policies and procedures because of various reasons. And so there have been times when policies and procedures have been waived or overridden or not strictly enforced.
If they were enforced, it would be by compliance.
Yes.
And who makes those decisions to waive policies and procedures?
subject to the form.
Which one?
Well, you referred to there are instances where policies and procedures have been waived. In those instances that you can recall, who made that decision?
Again, they've been waived. They're waived multiple different ways at different times in different places for different reasons, and different people have different levels of authority to either enforce them strictly or constitute a waiver.
Do you have to sign off on waivers?
Again, depends on the level of the infraction, where it is in you know, what did they violate?
I assume Deanne also has authority to waive the policies and procedures. Is that fair?
I would say yes.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Everybody on the phone dealing with somebody with a violation of policies and procedures. Again, you're asking this question about policies and procedures as if there's a thing that's policies and procedures. There's minutia, there's bigger policies, there's policies that are guidelines, there's policies that are guidelines there to help protect the retailers, there's policies that are there to protect the company. There's policies and procedures about a lot of things. And oftentimes, if you're on the phone with an IFR and you find that maybe they violated MAP and it's their first violation of MAP, there's not a punishment affixed to that. Therefore, by saying, hey, you violated MAP and we'd like you not to do that in the future, that is kind of a waiver of the policy, right? We haven't done anything about it. We've just said, hey, you're doing this, there's a policy there. So that to answer in a broad term about policies and procedures is pretty difficult.
I understand. So why don't we do it this way? Do you recall instances where you had to approve a waiver?
I'm not sure about an instance where I approved a waiver. There are instances where I instigated waivers, and there probably are instances where I approved waivers, but I don't have a specific recollection.
You don't have a specific recollection either of instigating or approving, or just approving?
I don't have specific recollections right now of either of them.
Now would be a good time.
Thank you.
Off the record, the time is 2:27 p.m.
Oh, thank you. That's great.